Mars colonization isn't salvation, it's exile. Earth's elite are shipping us off-world. Welcome to Cool, Weird, and Possible. Today we're really diving deep into, well, a pretty provocative idea. Elon Musk is actually building a prison planet for humanity. Yeah, we're going to try and peel back the layers here. We'll look at the grand visions, escaping Earth, but also some unnerving whispers about control, maybe population schemes, and we'll even get into whether tech like Neuralink could end up being like a mandatory ticket just to survive off-world. Is this whole thing really about survival for all of us, or maybe just an escape hatch for a select few? Let's try and unpack this. For so long, space exploration has been sold to us as this noble quest, right? Like it's about knowledge, adventure, maybe even a backup plan for humanity.
That's definitely the common narrative, and it's central to what people like Elon Musk talk about, making humanity multiplanetary as a, quote, fail-safe against disaster. Mars is his big focus there.
But he's not the only one dreaming big, is he?
Not at all. You've got Jeff Bezos with his vision, which is maybe even grander in scale. He talks about these giant cylindrical space stations housing potentially 1 trillion humans.
1 trillion? Wow.
Yeah, his goal is this future with like 1,000 Mozarts and 1,000 Einsteins out there in the solar system. It's about unlocking human potential on a massive scale.
Okay, that sounds aspirational. But it really does make you stop and think. When we talk about saving humanity, is it really all of humanity? Or, I don't know, does it start to sound like maybe only the very wealthy get a seat on that spaceship?
Well, that question leads us straight into this whole phenomenon some people are calling the billionaire escape pod. It's become a noticeable trend.
What do you mean?
We're seeing tech billionaires investing heavily in these luxury underground bunkers. Think people like Sam Altman, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos. They've reportedly funded these really fortified hideouts.
Hideouts from what?
From, well, a range of potential events. Geopolitical instability, cyber attacks, climate disasters, economic collapse, maybe even civil unrest. And New Zealand seems to be a popular spot, probably for its isolation.
So these aren't just like concrete boxes with canned food.
Oh, definitely not. These are designed for long-term, comfortable living. We're talking serious infrastructure. Solar power, advanced air and water filtration, hydroponic farms to grow food, medical facilities.
Luxury features too.
Yeah, gyms, spas, even cinemas. They're less like shelters and more like self-contained luxury havens. It suggests they're planning for more than just a temporary emergency.
Okay, so that really puts the ethical question front and center for you listening right now. If Earth actually becomes uninhabitable, who gets to get to Mars? Who stays behind? It feels very Elysium, that movie with the rich folks on the fancy space station and everyone else stuck on a dying Earth. It's that kind of class separation, but maybe on a planetary scale. And if you dig into some of the analysis, this mindset, as some sources call it, it talks about this idea of externalization of harm. Like the super wealthy can distance themselves from the problems, maybe even problems they contributed to.
A desire for separation.
Yeah, like transcendence and separation from the people and places that have been abused. There's this almost faith, this Silicon Valley certainty that technology can just fix everything, break the rules of physics, economics, even morality.
To engineer an escape.
And escape from, as one source put it, the apocalypse of their own making. And what's really kind of chilling is reading about how some of these billionaires are apparently thinking about maintaining control after some kind of collapse.
Control over what? Or who?
Over their own security forces, apparently. There's talk in some circles about using special locks on food supplies or disciplinary collars, even using robots as guards.
That sounds dystopian.
It really does.
Yeah.
When you hear that stuff, it makes the whole colonize Mars thing feel less like saving humanity and more like escaping the rest of us. Okay, that's a pretty dark potential motivation. But let's shift gears a bit. Putting aside why they might want to go, what about the how? What are the actual practical challenges of colonizing Mars? Is it even feasible, or is it just an incredibly difficult, maybe even prison-like existence?
Well, the scientific and engineering hurdles are just immense. Let's start with radiation. Mars doesn't have Earth's thick atmosphere or strong magnetic field.
So no natural shield.
Exactly. The surface is constantly bombarded by galactic cosmic rays, GCRs, and solar energetic particles, SAPs. These are high-energy particles that are seriously harmful to humans over the long term. Shielding against them effectively is a major, major challenge.
Okay, radiation. What else?
Then you have the dust storms, and these aren't like Earth dust storms. They can be massive, sometimes covering the entire planet.
The whole planet.
Yes. And when they get that big, they can block out almost all sunlight. We saw this with the opportunity the rover sunlight dropped to less than 1% of normal. Think about what that does to solar panels, which would be crucial for power.
Right. No sun, no power. And the dust itself must be bad for equipment.
Absolutely. It gets everywhere. It's abrasive, causes wear and tear, messes with thermal control. It's a huge engineering problem. And then there's the temperature.
I bet it gets cold.
Unbelievably cold, and the swings are extreme. Temperatures can plummet to minus 100 degrees Celsius or even lower. Without very advanced, very reliable life support and habitats, you wouldn't survive minutes.
Yeah, deadly cold, radiation, dust, anything else.
Yes, a big one. Reduced gravity. Mars's gravity is only about 38% of Earth's. Living in that long term has serious physiological effects.
Like what astronauts experience on the ISS.
Similar, but potentially worse because it's constant, not microgravity. We're talking significant bone density loss, maybe 1 to 3% per month, and muscle atrophy, maybe 5% per month. Over years, that really adds up and could seriously impact health and the ability to function.
So basically your body starts falling apart.
In a way, yes. Now, people are working on solutions, obviously, building habitats underground, using the Martian soil, the regolith for shielding, maybe creating artificial magnetic fields around habitats, developing drugs to counteract bone loss.
And for basic survival?
Yeah.
Food, air.
Things like aeroponics are being looked at for growing food. It uses way less water, up to 90% less than traditional farming. And algae bioreactors could potentially produce oxygen, recycle waste, and even be a food source. But these are all complex, closed-loop systems that have to work perfectly.
Given all the radiation, the dust, the cold, the gravity making your body waste away, it just begs the question, why send people? Why not just send robots? Could this push for human colonization actually be, I don't know, a form of population control?
Or exile. Well, let's look at the numbers. Elon Musk has talked about maybe getting 1 million people to Mars by 2060. That sounds like a lot, but most experts consider that wildly optimistic. And even if it happened, compare it to Earth's population growth. We add about 80 million people every year.
So 1 million to Mars over decades doesn't even make a dent.
Not even close. Someone calculated that just to move 4 million Americans off-world annually, which is still tiny compared to global growth, you'd need a Starship launch from somewhere like JFK every 52 minutes, 247.
That's impossible. Logistically insane.
Pretty much. Which is why many argue robots make much more sense for resource extraction or initial base building. They don't need air, don't get sick from radiation in the same way, don't suffer bone loss.
And no ethical dilemmas about sending them to a potentially lethal environment.
Exactly. So the scale required for Mars to be any kind of backup for Earth's population just doesn't seem feasible with current or foreseeable technology.
Which brings us back to that darker idea,
Uh-huh.
the prison planet. It's a classic sci-fi trope, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. It goes way back. You had stories like Murray Leinster's The Disciplinary Circuit in the 40s with a place called AIDS, or even earlier, Edmund Hamilton's The Great Amphibian in the 30s, using Ganymede. Harl Vincent's Vulcan's Workshop.
Places where undesirables or criminals were sent. Exile.
Often involving forced labor or exploitation, yeah. Like you saw in the movie Total Recall with the Martian mines. It taps into that fear that a new frontier might not be liberating for everyone, but exploitative for some.
And if you did establish a colony, how would you even govern it? Are there laws for Mars?
That's a huge question mark. The main treaty, the Outer Space Treaty from 1967, is mostly about preventing nations from claiming territory or putting weapons of mass destruction in space. It doesn't really lay out a legal framework for, Martian property law or criminal justice in a colony.
So it's a legal Wild West.
Potentially, yes. One idea floated for funding colonies is controversial. Sell off nearby land for resource mining to corporations. That might bring in money, but raises big ethical questions about who owns Mars, who profits, and who sets the rules for the colonists.
Okay, let's pivot slightly to another piece of futuristic tech, often linked with someone like Musk. Neuralink. Brain-computer interfaces. What's the potential there, separate from Mars for a moment?
Well, the medical potential is undeniably huge. We saw the first human implant in 2024, right? The patient could control a computer cursor just by thinking.
That's incredible.
It really is. Imagine the possibilities for people with severe paralysis, brain injuries, spinal cord damage, restoring movement, communication, but the ambitions go further. Potentially helping with memory loss, blindness, hearing loss. Even treating conditions like depression, anxiety, seizures, addiction could be revolutionary for medicine.
The potential benefits sound amazing, but
Yeah.
knowing the theme we're exploring, Could something like Neuralink become, well, mandatory for survival out there, on a
Well,
long Mars trip or in a colony,
yeah.
not just a medical choice?
That's definitely entering the more speculative, future thinking realm. But yes, some researchers are exploring that very idea. Think about the psychological toll of a Mars journey.
Months trapped in a small ship with the same few people.
Exactly. Maybe 3 to 6 months, confined, isolated. The risk of serious psychological issues, depression, conflict, even psychosis is very real. So one idea is that Neuralink could be used to create incredibly realistic sensory simulations.
Like the holodeck on Star Trek.
Kinda, yeah. The concept is to provide a full sensory experience, sight, sound, touch, smell, maybe even taste, like experiencing a virtual cocktail at the beach. The goal would be to drastically improve psychological well-being, basically keep colonists from, as one researcher put it, going insane and starting going berserk.
Wow. So a technological fix for the human mind's limitations in space.
Potentially. Though it's important to stress current Neuralink tech is nowhere near that full sensory immersion level. It's more of a long-term theoretical application being discussed.
But if it did get there, the ethical alarms start ringing pretty loudly, don't they?
Yeah.
Our sources raise some serious points. What about autonomy? Informed consent. If this tech is integrated into your brain, blurring the lines between your mind and the machine, who are you anymore?
That's a fundamental question. And privacy, these devices are bidirectional. They don't just send signals out, they can potentially read incredibly sensitive neural data. Who gets access to that? How is it protected?
And responsibility. What if someone commits a crime using a BCI? Is it them? Is it a malfunction? Could someone hack it and make them do something?
These are complex legal and moral questions with no easy answers right now. And then you get into even weirder territory like brain uploading.
Creating digital copies of consciousness.
The idea of it, yeah, for potential immortality. It opens up massive philosophical debates about what the self even is. These aren't just technical hurdles, they're deeply human ones.
And some interpretations get really extreme, don't they? There was that source mentioning visions of Elon Musk as some kind of entity.
Yes, there were some highly speculative, frankly fringe accounts included in the source material, describing visions experienced under the influence of DMT. These depicted Musk in very symbolic, almost mythological terms, a powerful entity, a parasite, a manipulator, even suggesting connections to figures like the false prophet from Revelation.
Okay, that's definitely out there. And mentions of his family background, Werner von Braun.
Right. Those sources brought up speculative links to his family's history and a historical reference to Werner von Braun supposedly writing about an Elon leading humans to Mars. It's important to stress these are very unconventional interpretations bordering on conspiracy theory drawn from specific, less mainstream sources in our research pool.
So not exactly mainstream scientific analysis there.
No, definitely not. But it highlights the intense speculation and sometimes extreme narratives that can build up around these powerful figures and transformative technologies. The key takeaway, though, from the more grounded ethical discussions, is the absolute need for stringent oversight and ethical frameworks.
And transparency, right. There was criticism about Neuralink not following traditional scientific publishing routes initially.
Yes, that lack of peer-reviewed data early on raised concerns in the scientific community. It ties into that broader worry discussed by researchers even at places like MIT, that powerful technologies, if not carefully managed, could inadvertently pave the way for new kinds of social control, embedding rules and enforcement right into the tech itself.
Which brings us back full circle, really. This whole grand vision, this push for the stars, is it genuinely humanity's next evolutionary step? Or is it looking more like an elaborate escape plan, mostly for the very rich and powerful?
Well, one factor we have to include in that picture is the environmental cost of getting off the planet right now. Current space travel has a significant footprint.
Rockets aren't exactly eco-friendly, I'm guessing.
Not at all. A Falcon 9 launch releases something like 28,000 tons of greenhouse gases, and Starship, the really big one, is estimated at around 76,000 tons per flight.
That's a lot.
It is. And it's not just greenhouse gases. The exhaust, particularly the black carbon or soot, gets injected high into the atmosphere, into the stratosphere.
And that causes problems.
Yes, research shows the stratosphere is quite sensitive to it. Black carbon absorbs sunlight, heats things up, disrupts atmospheric circulation patterns, and can even deplete the ozone layer. Even a relatively small number of launches can have a measurable impact up there.
So there's a climate justice angle here too then.
Yeah.
People talk about the rocket set, the super rich who can afford space tourism, like that $200 million trip Jared Isaacman reportedly took.
Exactly. Critics argue that focusing huge resources on space colonization, which realistically is only accessible to a tiny fraction of wealthy individuals and nations, distracts from urgent needs right here on Earth.
Like dealing with climate change.
Precisely. Funding climate adaptation, helping communities already suffering from climate impacts, investing in sustainable development. The argument is that those should be the priorities, rather than building an escape route that doubles down on emissions. It's a real paradox, isn't it? Trying to escape potential environmental collapse on Earth by using technology that contributes to environmental problems.
It definitely highlights the need for some serious critical thinking when we hear about these grand plans.
Absolutely. It's crucial to balance the excitement about technological possibility with a very clear-eyed assessment of the practicalities, the ethics, and the potential consequences.
So here's a final thought for you to take away. As humanity looks towards Mars, dreaming of becoming multiplanetary,
Hmm.
how do we make sure that journey doesn't leave behind the very things that should define us? Values like equity, shared progress, and looking out for everyone, not just the few who can afford the ticket. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the cool, weird, and possible future of humanity. Please subscribe to our channel to stay informed and explore more fascinating topics with us.